The observation deck hummed with the quiet confidence of species who had already passed the trial of adaptation. 17 different civilizations, all pressed against the viewing glass, watching the newest batch of candidates stumble through what we considered the most basic survival assessment in the galaxy, find shelter in 60 minutes. That's it. That's the whole test, Commander Vrel, a towering Calthosian with scales that shimmered like oil on water, tapped one of his 6 claws against the display panel. The Torquin delegate looks promising, he rumbled, watching as a crab-like creature began gathering branches with impressive efficiency. Promising? I snorted, my antennae twitching with amusement. Cricks, that thing's been at it for 20 minutes and has barely assembled a lean-to that wouldn't stop a light breeze. My name is Quen, lead xenobiologist for the Galactic Concordance, and I've watched 3,000 species attempt this trial. 3,000. You'd think after that many observations, nothing would surprise me anymore. You'd be wrong, the human was late to the starting zone. Typical. They're always late. This one, a female specimen named Maya Torres, had apparently stopped to help another candidate whose translator had malfunctioned. The Vrexian hadn't even been grateful, just hissed something about primitive savior complexes before skittering away. 37 minutes remaining, announced the automated system, its voice echoing across the test zone. A forest clearing, temperature dropping rapidly, storm clouds gathering on the artificial horizon. Standard protocol. Predictable danger. Maya stood at the edge of the clearing, hands on her hips, head tilting as she surveyed the area. The other candidates were in full panic mode now. The Torquin had abandoned its half-built lean-to and was trying to dig a burrow. The Seraph was attempting to weave leaves together with its tentacles. The Mecther, bless its crystalline heart, was just standing there, apparently hoping its natural armor would be enough. It wouldn't be. She's not moving, observed Lieutenant Threx, a young officer from the Pinnacle sector. Is she broken? Give her a moment, I muttered, leaning forward. Something about her posture intrigued me. There was no panic in her body language. No frantic energy. Just assessment. Then she started walking. Not running. Walking. Like she was taking a casual stroll through a park instead of racing against a countdown that would determine whether her species was deemed worthy of intergalactic contact. Where is she going? Vrel's voice carried an edge of concern. The building materials are all in the clearing. Standard placement. She's heading toward the perimeter. 29 minutes, the system announced cheerfully. Maya had reached the tree line and was moving through it with surprising grace, stepping over roots, ducking under branches. Her eyes, those bizarre forward-facing predator eyes, were scanning constantly. Looking for something. She's wasting time, Threx declared. Humans. I told you they wouldn't make it past the preliminary assessments. I didn't respond. Something was wrong here. Or right. I couldn't tell which yet. The other candidates were making progress now. The Torquin had actually managed a decent burrow, though the entrance looked unstable. The Serapha's leaf tent was, well, it was creative. Points for creativity. The Mecther had finally given up and was trying to squeeze itself under a rock. Maya stopped walking. She stood perfectly still for maybe 5 seconds, which in trial time felt like an eternity, then changed direction slightly. Moved with more purpose now. 15 minutes remaining. She's going to fail, Vrel said, but there was uncertainty in his tone now. He'd been doing this job almost as long as I had. He recognized something off-script when he saw it. The human reached a small rocky outcropping we'd placed as environmental decoration. Aesthetic purposes only. Not meant to be part of the solution. She walked around it once, twice, then dropped to her knees and started clearing away moss and small stones from what looked like a darker patch of ground. What is she doing? Threx demanded. There's nothing there but dirt and rocks. But I was already pulling up the geological survey of the test zone, my fingers flying across the holographic interface. The original scans, from before we'd terraformed this asteroid into our testing ground. Before we'd shaped it to our specifications. "Oh no," I whispered. "What?" Vrel turned to me, concern replacing his earlier confidence. "That outcropping. It's not decoration. It's natural. It was already there. So, look at the formation." I threw the scan up on the main display. "See that shadow? That's not a shadow." The human had cleared enough debris away to reveal what she'd somehow detected from the clearing. An opening. Small, mostly hidden, but definitely there. She pulled a small tool from her pocket, some kind of folding knife, and used it to pry away more obstruction. 10 minutes remaining. Maya disappeared into the opening. Completely. Just gone. The observation deck went silent. Even the delegates from species who'd already passed the trial had stopped their chattering to watch. Did she just? Threx couldn't finish the sentence. "She found a cave," I said, still staring at the screen. "A cave we didn't put there. A cave we didn't even know was there." 5 minutes remaining. The storm system activated on schedule. Rain began falling, hard and cold. Wind picked up, bending trees, tearing at the hastily constructed shelters below. The Torkin's burrow collapsed. The Ceratha's leaf tent lasted maybe 8 seconds before shredding. The Mechthar was completely exposed, its armor already forming ice crystals. Emergency crews were standing by. They always were. We wouldn't let candidates die, just face genuine hardship. It built character. Supposedly. 2 minutes remaining. Then, from the opening in the rocks, a thin trail of smoke began rising. Gray. Steady. Unmistakable. Commander Vrel's jaw, both of them, dropped open. "She made a fire," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She found a cave we didn't place, and she made a fire." 1 minute remaining. The smoke thickened slightly, then dispersed as if being drawn upward through some kind of natural ventilation. A chimney effect. The cave had a chimney. "Test concluded," announced the system. "All candidates may now exit the trial zone." The human emerged 30 seconds later, completely dry, a slight smile on her face. She'd even had time to braid her hair. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Questions shouted in 17 different languages, holographic displays going haywire as everyone tried to access the geological data simultaneously. I just sat there, watching Maya Torres stretch in the rain like she'd just woken up from a pleasant nap. "Quen," Vrel said slowly. "How did she know?" I pulled up her file, scanning through the biographical data. "Says here she's from a region called Colorado. Mountain territory. High elevation. Harsh winters. And I think we just learned something important about humans." "What's that?" I leaned back in my chair, antennae twitching with what I was beginning to recognize as respect. They don't just survive environments. They read them. The debriefing room was smaller than the observation deck, which meant the arguing felt about 3 times louder. 17 species, all with opinions, all convinced they knew exactly what had just happened. They didn't. "Clearly a malfunction in the testing parameters," insisted Delegate Morvik, a Vrexian whose translator made every word sound like an accusation. "The geological survey should have identified that cave structure. The human simply benefited from our administrative oversight." Administrative oversight? I couldn't help myself. My antennae were practically vibrating with irritation now. She identified a cave entrance from 60 meters away, in failing light, while every other candidate was tearing apart the clearing we specifically filled with building materials. That's not luck, Morvik. That's skill. Primitive skill, he shot back. Pattern recognition. Animal instinct. Hardly worthy of advanced civilization status. Commander Vrel raised one massive claw, and the room fell silent. When a Calthosian demands quiet, you give it to them. The human will be interviewed. Standard protocol. We will determine methodology and intent. Until then, speculation serves no purpose. But speculation was all we had, and everyone knew it. Maya Torres sat in the interview chamber looking remarkably unbothered for someone whose entire species' future might depend on the next 20 minutes. She'd been given water, food, a chance to rest. She'd accepted the water, ignored the food, and spent her rest period doing something called push-ups. Humans were exhausting. I activated the communication link. Miss Torres, thank you for your patience. No problem. Her voice carried that strange human quality, casual and focused at the same time. Though I gotta say, your waiting room chairs are really uncomfortable. Like, aggressively uncomfortable. They're designed for mechthar physiology, Lieutenant Threx muttered beside me. They don't have spines, I muttered back. Maya leaned forward, elbows on the table, chin resting on her hands. Direct eye contact. Predator behavior. Most species found it unsettling. So, are we doing good cop, bad cop here, or just straight to the questions? We simply want to understand your process, Vrel said smoothly. The trial is designed to assess problem solving under pressure. You chose a very unusual approach. Did I? She smiled, and there was something dangerous in it. Not threatening. Just confident. Seemed pretty straightforward to me. You ignored all provided materials, Threx interjected. Every previous candidate, successful or not, utilized the resources we placed in the clearing. You walked away from them. Yeah, because they were a trap. The room went silent. Explain, Vrel commanded. Maya sat back, crossing her arms. Look, no offense, but your test was pretty obvious. Big clearing, conveniently full of branches and leaves and rocks, storm clouds already forming overhead. It screamed setup. And setups have patterns. Patterns, I repeated, leaning closer to my own microphone. Right. See, on Earth, we have these things called survival courses. Rich people pay stupid money to pretend they're camping. The instructors always do the same thing. They give you a clearing with obvious resources and a time limit. They want to see if you panic and grab the easy option or if you actually look around first. And you looked around, Vrel said slowly. Of course I looked around. First rule of real survival, assess your environment before you commit to a plan. So I checked the perimeter, looked for anything that seemed out of place or interesting. The rock formation, I said. Exactly. Her eyes lit up, that peculiar human enthusiasm that seemed to accompany problem solving. It didn't match the surrounding geology. Different color, different weathering pattern, positioned at a weird angle to the slope. Plus, there was moss growing thicker on one side, which usually means moisture and shade. So I figured, if I were a cave entrance, that's where I'd be. Threx was frantically taking notes. But the fire. How did you know there would be adequate ventilation? I didn't, not for sure. But the entrance angle suggested upward continuation, and when I checked inside, I could feel air movement. Basic convection. Heat rises, pulls in cool air from below, you get a natural draft. Humans have been using that principle for like 10,000 years. 10,000, Morvik's voice crackled over the intercom. She's exaggerating. Actually, archaeological evidence suggests even earlier, Maya said cheerfully. But who's counting? Vrel exchanged a glance with me. In the years we'd worked together, I'd learned to read Calthosian expressions pretty well. He was impressed. More than impressed. He was concerned. Miss Torres, one final question. You helped another candidate before the trial began. The Vrection whose translator malfunctioned. Why? She shrugged. Because they needed help? I don't know, seemed like the right thing to do. I mean, what's the point of testing survival skills if someone can't even understand the instructions? That's not a test, that's just mean. Even though it cost you time, I added. Time that could have resulted in your failure. Sure, but what good is passing a test if you're an asshole doing it? The translator struggled with that last word, cycling through several options before settling on something approximating selfish waste matter. Close enough, Commander Vrel deactivated the interview link and turned to face the assembled delegates. His expression was unreadable, which for a Calthosian meant he'd already made up his mind and was just deciding how to phrase it. The human passes, he announced. Unanimous approval required. Vote now. The board lit up with responses. Green, green, green. Even Morvik, after a long pause that probably hurt his pride, voted green. Motion carries. Miss Torres, humanity has passed the trial of adaptation. Welcome to the Galactic Concordance. Through the observation window, I watched Maya's face split into a genuine smile. Not triumphant. Not smug. Just happy. Like she'd made a new friend instead of securing her species' place among the stars. Quen, Vrel said quietly, after the other delegates had filed out. Your assessment? I pulled up the data one more time, looking at the scan of that cave, the one we'd missed. The one a human had spotted in minutes. I think we've been testing wrong, I admitted. We've been measuring adaptation as the ability to use what's provided. Humans don't just use what's provided. They look for what's hidden. They find advantages we didn't even know existed. Is that dangerous? I thought about Maya helping a competitor. About her walking calmly while others panicked. About her sitting in our uncomfortable chair and making jokes while her whole species waited on her success. Probably, I said. But I think it might also be exactly what the Concordance needs. Vrel nodded slowly, his scales shifting colors in what I recognized as contemplation. The Council will want a full report. They'll get one. But Vrel? Yes? Make sure they understand something. We didn't just admit humans because they passed our test. We admitted them because they reminded us that survival isn't about following the script. It's about writing a better one. Through the window, Maya Torres was being escorted to the diplomatic quarters. She stopped to examine a plant in the corridor, asking questions to her guide, who looked completely overwhelmed by her enthusiasm. Yeah, I thought. The galaxy had no idea what it was in for, and honestly, I couldn't wait to watch.